Okay, so we know that contact lens patients drop out from wearing lenses. What can we as practitioners do to optimize the performance of lenses such that that doesn't happen? And I think probably what we need to think about is to think about this issue in terms of two factors. The first relating to the patient and the second relating to the lens. So let's think about the patient first of all. What information can we gather and use to optimize the patient's chance of being comfortable in their lenses? Well, the first thing we can do is really simple. Let's think about optimizing the local environment that the patient sat in. Things like increasing humidity. If your patient is working in a low humidity environment, those lenses are going to be uncomfortable. So think about prescribing, for example, a local humidifier. Things like reducing direct air conditioning. If you'll have air conditioning blowing straight into your face, those lenses are going to dehydrate and be uncomfortable. So really simple kind of local things that you can ask your patient to consider. The next thing is really optimizing the quality of the ocular surface and tear film. We know that even the best contact lens material in the world prescribed with the best solution is not going to work if the ocular surface is compromised. So make sure that we check that. And sometimes we think about doing that with patients who've got symptoms or are even non-lens wearers. We need to do that with every contact lens wearer. So things like minimizing any ocular surface staining, improving the quantity and quality of the tear film. We're also beginning to get good data these days on things like diet, so dietary intake of things like omega-3s, and also things like high intake of water can also impact the quality of the tear film and directly therefore impact the ocular surface. The final thing for the patient is to look for any compromise of the lids, things like meibomian gland dysfunction, blepharitis, the presence of Demodex. All of those who've got good evidence actually reduce contact lens performance, so address those issues before we fit the lenses. The next thing to think about then relates to the lens material. What information can we think about that helps us prescribe the most appropriate lens material? Well, the contact lens companies have been great in terms of optimizing those lens materials, and there's kind of really been 6 things that they've given us, 6 options. The first is very simple. It's to add wetting agents to the blister pack solution, and good evidence that that can improve initial comfort in particular, but of course that really works for daily disposables. Second option, low dehydration materials. Having materials that maintain their water content and don't dehydrate will optimize the interaction of that lens with the ocular surface. And of course, low dehydration materials, that's particularly related to silicone hydrogels. Next thing relates to the elution of polymers from the lens material. We've had hydrogel materials that elute PVA for many, many years, and that impacts contact lens wettability. Fourth option, using a variety of surface coatings or surface treatments to enhance wettability. Fifth option, addition of internal wetting agents. Again, for many years now, we've known that increasing the addition of internal wetting agents that move to the surface of the lens material and make them more wettable works very well. The sixth, the most recent option, is a thing called the water surface concept. Now, what do we mean by that? What do we mean by water surface technology? Well, what that is it's basically accepting the fact that having a single core of high oxygen permeable silicone hydrogel materials is great in terms of getting oxygen to the eye, but it's not great because silicone hydrogels inherently are not typically as wettable as hydrogels. So how do we overcome that? Well, we take that silicone hydrogel core and we overlay that with a very high water content, gel-like surface that enhances the wettability of the underlying silicone hydrogel material. That's been available now for daily disposables for a number of years, and now we're starting to see the introduction of these materials in a reusable format into the contact lens market. What that means for the lids is that the lids, as they move, they see this very wettable, high water content material that wets beautifully and feels more comfortable. And publications have demonstrated that these materials are really quite unique. They've got these very soft compressible surface. They've got very high in vitro wettability that we see when we measure wettability in the laboratory, and also reduced lipid and protein deposition, bacterial cell adhesion, and in particular, very, very low frictional forces. That means when the lid goes across that lens, it does so very easily.